Reading is subjective. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I saw Destiny last year do a reading vlog of all the different books from the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I thought that was actually a really interesting idea. I am such a mood reader. I do tend to just read whatever I fancy. Sometimes, yes, there'll be an upcoming release that I'm mega excited about, but I'm kind of maybe slow to the party on some books, so I thought it would be really interesting to go through the different genres and read some of those books in today's video. So we're going to be starting off with a genre that I don't ever really gravitate towards. If you're a long-time viewer, you might know that about me, but we're going to jump in with the thriller genre. Now, on the Goodreads Choice Awards, the actual winner for this was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I don't really have any interest in reading that book because there was a runner-up on this category that definitely appealed more to me. So yeah, I'm not going to be necessarily reading the winners, but I just want to read books that got highly nominated, that were close runners-up, that kind of thing. Because, you know, we're not here to force ourselves to read books that we're not interested in. So if you scroll down just a tad, the third highest rated book in the thrillers genre was The Boyfriend by Freida McFadden. I'm caving in. I've heard so much about this book in the last few months, and I've decided that now is the time. Like, I just absolutely have to read it. So I've downloaded it on my Kindle because it is on Kindle Unlimited, which is something I've only had recently. I don't know how I went so long without having Kindle Unlimited. It is life-changing. I really didn't realize how many books are actually included in the Kindle Unlimited subscription. So absolute slay. My Kindle is officially going to be my new best friend if it wasn't pretty high up already. But yeah, I don't really know anything about this book other than what I've heard people saying online. As far as I know, it follows a girl who goes on a date with a guy who is essentially perfect for her. Like, she's had so many failed dates in the past, and she finally goes on with this perfect guy. He turns out to be like the perfect boyfriend. And then I believe some murders are taking place, and the victims tend to be the guy's girlfriends. Our main character starts second guessing her perfect boyfriend. I think I've got that right. I literally haven't even read a blurb. That is just going off of what I've heard from other people's reviews. So yeah, I thought we would start off reading this in today's video. This is the first book that we're going to be reading from the Goodreads Choice Awards. But first, it is freezing in here, so let's go make a drink. Emotional support bunny for when things get creepy. Oh, okay, very short but interesting first chapter. That's definitely set the story up for sure. Jesus. I can't believe how much of a dick that guy was from chapter 1. One of the many bad dates that she's had in the past, but wow, what a dick. We are literally like half an hour away from finishing The Boyfriend. I've done a little bit of reading since I last updated you guys, obviously. Shit is literally just about to go down. We are just about to find out what has been going on this whole time. What chapter am I on? I'm on chapter 59. I'm intrigued to see what happened. I had a theory. I think I said on camera that I had a theory a while back. I was right. I think the big twist is about to happen, and I don't know what the twist is, but I've got a feeling that, yeah, this twist is going to be like mega, because already it's kind of been building up, and it's already like I'm now questioning everything that I assumed was going on in this book, because I feel like not even just this book in itself, as I'm sure with most thrillers, the narrative is almost skewed in a way to make you follow along a certain path where you think you kind of know the story's going, and then you end up second guessing yourself, and then it turns out that actually, yeah, things are not at all what they seemed. So I'm literally going to sit and binge the ending of this. I'm home alone. It's not the creepiest of books, honestly, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm a little bit freaked. So if you can see the green glares, because I've literally got football on the TV. I don't watch football, but it feels less scary knowing that that is on. in the background while I finish this book, Home Alone, and I've got my sticky toffee hot chocolate. So yeah, let's see how things are going to unravel. I'm intrigued. That's mad. I didn't see that coming, and I feel like I should have seen that coming. Somehow I didn't see that coming. Interesting. Oh, damn. Okay, yeah, I really did not know the twist in this book. Okay, this is mental. I need to find out what happens right now. I've decided to attach my mic because my boyfriend's talking very loudly in this flat right now, so hopefully this is kind of filtering out some of that noise. But anyway, I wanted to come on and talk to you guys about The Boyfriend because I have actually finished this a couple of days ago now, and I really enjoyed it. I think I managed to catch some actual authentic reactions on camera, which is great. I was so dubious going into this because I've seen some people say they loved it, but a lot of those people were like not die hard, but were like quite strong Freida McFadden fans anyway. So I wasn't sure if there was like a bit of bias behind that, because I'd seen other people say that they just really didn't vibe with this and it was really predictable and a little bit boring. I was like, I've read Freida McFadden before, I have enjoyed the stuff that I've read before. I'm also not a big thriller girly, so I just really didn't know how I was gonna feel about this book, but I really enjoyed it, and I think I'm gonna land on a 4-star. I was kind of thinking, do I want to give it 4.5? We'll see. I mean, maybe I'll bump it up in the future if I find myself thinking about it a lot, because there's potential. Like, I really liked it. I liked the characters. We had quite a big scope of characters in this book, which is great, obviously, for a thriller, because it just opens up the avenues into like who you suspect is the bad guy and like the different storylines. This does follow 2 different POVs, one in past tense and one in present tense. So immediately you're meeting all these characters from both POVs and you're thinking who's connected to who, like how are we weaving these storylines together. And I do enjoy that aspect of thrillers, is like trying to play detective and figure everything out before it gets revealed to you. But I'd say it was really cleverly done. Definitely did not see the ending coming. That was a big twist. I really started to think that I'd connected the dots, and I don't think actually, I said my theory was right. I don't believe it was. I don't know where I got that from. My theory definitely was not correct. But yes, ultimately this was a really great reading experience, and if I wanted to, I could have easily have binged this in one day. I've already recommended it to a couple of my friends because yeah, I just think this is a really great thriller if you're looking for maybe to get out of a bit of a slump, or if you enjoy thrillers. I feel like this one seems so simple, like the concept of it seems so simple. Oh, girl gets with a boyfriend, suspects that he's actually like a serial killer. It was done, in my opinion, very well. So yeah, this was a good time. So far, one of the biggest nominees for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I can understand now why it was highly voted for. But the next genre we're going to delve into on the Goodreads Choice Awards of last year is just general fiction. Now, the number 1 winner, which had a massive like 90,000 plus votes, The Wedding People by Alison Esbach, I think that's how you say it. I do actually really want to read this. However, there was a bit of an opportunistic moment because my book club's book for January is Intermezzo, and that is actually the 2nd highest voted book for this genre. That's the one that we're going to go with. I started this last night. I am like 50 pages in, and look, I've read Normal People and I didn't vibe with it, and I wasn't sure if I was the right demographic, although I think I was, because I would have been like very late teens I think at that time, and if I remember rightly I think it is about teens or like fresh out of school people or school people, I'm not sure. Anyway, I just remember struggling to connect to the book and the writing and the characters, and as soon as I've opened Intermezzo I can immediately remember and see why there was a bit of a barrier stopping me from enjoying the book as much as I figured I would, because it was so popular at the time. Sally Rooney has a very niche, unique way of writing. She's not a fan of quotation marks. She doesn't put dialogue in her books like you see in other books. There's a narrator telling you what's happened. So like, for example, it'll go, I guess you only make good moves, she says. Like, it's all very much laid out like that. So that can be hard to grasp at first. And then it's also just very much like a stream of consciousness. It dips in and out. It's hard to stay focused because one minute
it's telling you what people are saying, and the next is like their internal monologue. It's like, oh, okay, they're not saying that out loud, that's what they're thinking in their head, if that makes sense. Like, it is really, for me, complicated to understand. I'm hoping once I've got a few chapters in and I've like spent a bit of time with her writing style, that hopefully things will kind of go into my brain a bit better, because I think this is one of those books where I've really got to like nail down and focus. Otherwise, I will just be reading the words, but nothing will actually be going into my brain. So I don't know. We'll see how I get on. But it's about two brothers, quite a big age gap. I think one's early 30s, one's early 20s, and their father has just passed away. One of the brothers is like a really highly rated chess player. I'm not sure about the other one, but I think we're kind of just following their lives, coping with the loss of their dad and the grief and the relationships that they have at the time of their grief. So it's going to be one of those books where I'm just going to have to go in blind and see what happens. But I've heard good things, I've heard bad things, so I'm not sure. If I manage to gel with her writing style, then maybe I'll have a good time. But I am a bit worried that it's just going to really stop me from enjoying or connecting to the characters in this. So
like a sex scene. It's kind of grossing me out, I'm not gonna lie. Also, this is what I mean about the way that the text is. Like, there are no breaks in those pages whatsoever. It is so overwhelming to look at when you're reading it. The chapters as well seem pretty long, so yeah, I don't know guys, I don't know. Two things to point out here. One, my hair is wet, I have had a shower. Two, if my house looks messy in the background, no it doesn't. I managed to get quite a bit more into Intermezzo yesterday, more than I actually thought I would. I was really knuckling down and trying so hard not to procrastinate, because it's been a struggle to get into this, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm now finally on page 150. I think I'm pretty much perfectly a third of the way through, and I tell you what, even though it's required a lot of brain power at this point to get into this, I think I'm finally there. I think I'm actually kind of invested now. I find myself a lot more invested in Ivan's story as opposed to Peter, and that doesn't surprise me because I just love the whole chess dynamic. I seem to really enjoy that in books. I really like Check and Mate. I also really enjoyed watching like the Queen's Gambit and stuff in the past, so clearly I just have some kind of magnetic pull towards chess themed things. But yeah, I'm starting to kind of be more intrigued in their lives and following along with the relationships that they're cultivating during their period of grief, and just, I'm in a very lucky position where I've never really had to handle grief, not with people that are like really close to me. I've lost a couple of grandparents, but no one like in my immediate family or anyone in my really close circle. I haven't lost anyone yet, and I'm so grateful for that. And this already has pointed out a couple of things of just how people tackle grief and like how they're handling it, and it is eye-opening, and I think it is, as I continue reading it, it's definitely going to open my eyes to a lot of the things that people experience during grief, how it changes them, how the things that they do to cope with it. There's already been a few sort of triggering themes in this book. There has been suicide has been mentioned, so definitely check trigger warnings going into this. I don't know what else we're obviously going to explore, but I would say there's probably definitely some trigger warnings somewhere that might be worth knowing. Loss obviously being a main one. I'm not hating this now as much as I was worried I would hate it. It just is one of those books that I kind of do have to psych myself up a little bit to like sit down and read it, because I could very easily just not really pay attention to what's going on and want to keep touching my phone and, you know, all that stuff. But generally, I'm having a good time. That's great news for me. I've got a bit of time now this evening. It's Friday night, I'm done for the week, and I've got a pretty free weekend, so I probably am gonna try to finish this by Sunday night. That feels like a mission. I know 2 days is quite a long time for some people, but to read the remaining, like, I think 250, 300 pages in a weekend with a book like this, for me, is quite a challenge, but I'm up for it. it's a bit later now in the day, but I did manage to finish Intermezzo earlier on. It was just such an odd experience, to be honest, from beginning to end is the best way I can describe it. And I think I want to say straight away before I give a bit of an overview as to how I felt about this book, I just don't think that I was the right demographic. The themes that were discussed in the book, I mean, I knew before I went into it briefly what the themes were going to be, and I'm luckily someone that hasn't had to experience a lot of the darkness that happens in this book. So obviously there was like a relatability issue there. That's fine. It did still open my eyes and give me a lot of insight into those themes. But also I just don't think that I am the right person for Sally Rooney's writing. I just don't think it's a kind of writing style that I personally gel with and enjoy. I managed to overcome that a little while into the book. I think I've mentioned that already. Eventually you kind of get used to reading it and you don't have to think so hard anymore about understanding the way that she's laying out the story. However, it still is a bit jarring to feel like you have to try so hard just to actually understand what the hell you're reading. I haven't long finished it and I don't know whether to sit on the review, but I don't think I can really rate it higher than a 3-star, so I think a 3 is what I'm going to go for. Look, I think the story definitely improved. The further on in the book we got, the more invested I definitely was in the characters. I started to care a lot more about the two brothers, what they were experiencing in their lives, especially Peter, which is ironic because I kind of didn't like him, but we'll discuss that in a little while. Yeah, I was starting to really ache for them and the things that they were experiencing, especially the dark thoughts and emotions that they were having. It was quite hard to read in places because you didn't want things to get worse for them and somehow they would. I definitely found the dialogue was the most engaging part of this book. That's where it kind of becomes a book of two halves for me, because once I got used to the way the dialogue was written, I was really enjoying it and really invested in the conversations that they were having and the relationships that they had. Their respective people, you know, Peter and his love interests, Ivan and his love interests. So the only other problem then there though is the other half, which falls into the gist. There was so much internal monologue with both characters. It was written in the third person, but you do still get to hear a lot of their personal thoughts in each chapter. And honestly, some of their like monologues and thoughts went on for so long, like it was really clunky. Some of these pages were just endless paragraphs of like no breaks, and I would just switch off at this point. Like it was really hard to stay engaged, especially when a lot of these monologues were talking about really niche specific topics. And I don't just mean like chess, I'm talking like a whole scope of different things. And I was just switching off, and it happened regularly, and that was a letdown for me. Again, like I say, I don't think maybe I'm the right audience. Maybe a different demographic would have really enjoyed it and found it insightful. Some things were insightful for me, but overall it was a bit of a miss and took away from the parts of the book that I was enjoying. So back to Peter. Yeah, I didn't like him as a character. Kind of felt a bit redeemed by the end of the book, but for me, one of the biggest themes in this book between the two brothers is their loneliness. Obviously, they're both grieving over the loss of their father. They're not very close. They bicker a lot. They argue about a lot of things. They don't see eye to eye. We're also following them separately, as I've mentioned, with their love interests. However, I just feel like whilst one of the common things that they are both going through is loneliness, they both handle it so differently, and I feel like the way that Peter handles it is so unjustified when you look at the way that Ivan is handling it. And obviously grief is so like non-linear, and everyone's going to handle things differently and experience things differently. And maybe that's the whole point of this book, obviously, to open your eyes to these kind of things and to showcase that people go through things differently and they process things differently. But yeah, I just feel like Peter was very harsh to pretty much all the people that he interacts with, and it was quite hard to read at times. But I'm glad that by the end of it, I feel like it was all redeemed. But again, during the process of reading it, it was a bit of a struggle at times. So yes, I don't think this was a bad book, and I can completely understand now why some people do rate it so highly, because I imagine a lot of the themes in this do hit home, are very relatable to other people, and there's obviously a whole target audience and range of people who really enjoy the way that Sally Rooney writes her books. For me, it did take a lot of work to enjoy it, which is such an odd thing when you're reading a book, because generally for me, while some people read books to feel intellectual and to be informed about things, which sometimes I do. Sometimes I want to feel informed about things that I don't have much of a knowledge on, and to give me a new perspective on things. But generally speaking, I just want to escape a bit, maybe get invested in some characters and feel for them and care for them, or just get lost in a whole different world. Yes, I cared about the characters. Yes, I was invested in their dialogue and their relationships, but overall it was more of a chore, I would say, than enjoyment is probably the best way I can describe it. But I'm really glad I read it, because I was really intrigued to read this book, and the fact that it just happened to be our book club pick for January worked out perfectly. So yes, I wouldn't say the general fiction genre of this video is a flop, because as I say, I feel very accomplished to have read this. I feel like I just would have been curious forever and ever beforehand, but I'm glad I've done it. I can officially say that I've now read Intermezzo. Okay, so there is one more category that we're going to cover in this video in terms of the Goodreads Choice Awards winners. And the last one I want to tackle is fantasy, because we're going to do romance, but all the ones that were high up on romance, I was either saving for a different time period or waiting for certain book types to come out. So like Funny Story, I'm waiting for the paperback, and then just for the summer, I'm waiting for it to be a little bit more spring summertime before I read that. So I moved on to fantasy. Now I have actually read the winner, which was House of Flame and Shadow, which got literally like 120,000 votes, which, hot take, I think that book is very overrated. I enjoyed the first two books. That one, I mean, it was good, it was epic, you were invested by that point, but personally I thought that was a bit of a flop. But anyway, the second highest rated book is in this package. So I bought it specifically for this video. I've read the first book, it is within a series. I would open it together. Let's hope this is a satisfying pull. 5 out of 10. The second highest voted for fantasy was Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mehra. I'm so excited to read this. I just had to recap myself. I read Assistant to the Villain, I think October last year. I've got such a short-term memory, but I enjoyed that book way more than I thought I would. I thought it would be just like a nice little 3-star read, passing the time, good little gap filler, but I think I ended up giving that like a 4-star, and I was way more invested than I thought I would be. And the way that it ended, I was like, I need to read the next book immediately, and this was just the perfect opportunity. So I can't really tell you what this book specifically is about, obviously, because I'm going to give series spoilers, but at least in the first book, Assistant to the Villain, we're following Evie and Tristan. Tristan is the villain, and Evie becomes his system to help pay the bills because her father is sick, her mother has fled, and her sister is currently at school. But they have a little romance, and yeah, the romance was romancing in that book. So I'm really excited to get into this one. Like I say, the last book ended on a pretty mad cliffhanger, and I am buzzing to get back into the story. So also, I just love the covers on these. Like, that's just, it's so fun. Let me get the other one. Like, how fun are these covers? Oh, I just love them both so much, and I'm very happy now to have the second book in the series in my possession. Yeah, I think I've got really no plans this evening, so I'm probably going to start this very soon. Apologies if this lighting isn't the best. I'm actually just about to get my head on the hay. What the hell is that saying? Hit the hay. I'm about to go to bed, to put it simple, but I realised I don't think I've really updated you guys once about my thoughts on Apprentice to the Villain, and I am making my way through it. I've pretty much got 100 pages I think left, and guys, it's a chore. I'm really disappointed. I loved Assistant to the Villain. I thought it was so fun, but this one just isn't hitting the same, because I think it's trying to achieve too much of the same sort of that Assistant to the Villain was trying to achieve. This is very much a slow burn romance, and it was hitting in Assistant to the Villain, but it's getting to the point now where it's like, why aren't you together? And I feel like it's not even miscommunication per se, like it is, but it's also this like notion that their romance is so forbidden because like a boss assistant kind of romance, which in a real world totally makes sense. In this fantasy world, it literally is irrelevant. I feel like it literally is at the point now where they've had this entire book so much obvious flirtation and like hints to their romance. Everyone around them knows, like everyone around them knows, and I'm just like, oh, is it really that forbidden at this point though? Because they very clearly care for each other and find each other attractive, and it's getting to the point now where I'm just like, guys, just Just pack it in, please. I also just feel like the plot is a little bit all over the place. I think that's why I'm struggling and finding it such a chore, is because I'm finally getting my head around something and then we change and go on to something else. Like, 1 minute they've been captured and then the next minute they're doing something else, and then the next minute there's a fire, and like there's just so much going on, and I'm like, whoa, like, can we focus on one thing, please? Explain that, deal with that, and then we'll move on. And I'm starting to find it a bit confusing and a bit disconnected, which is taking away from the story, because I feel like there is a general storyline here that we're trying to follow, but there are so many diversions at this point and it's just not fun for me. I'm not finding it nowhere near as fun as I did the first book. I'm struggling to get through this. Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I've just left it off now. I'm on page 234, where it seems they're gonna head off on the final quest to do what they've set out to do at the beginning of the book. We're finally doing it. Another thing though I've just remembered as well that bothers me sometimes with these kind of books is like there's quite a few side characters in this book, because we're following like the villain and his like operations and where he works kind of thing. It's kind of like a parody, I guess, on like an office. Like you've got like a HR manager in here, there's like a chef or like the canteen guy and he's like an ogre. It's all a bit of a parody, I guess, on like your average corporate life. So there's a lot of different characters that you meet who also work for the villain in some ways, but pretty much every single side character is now having a relationship with another side character, and I'm like, oh, it's just so easy and convenient. Like, it does annoy me sometimes when every side character gets with another side character and everyone's in a relationship by the end of it, and I'm just like, I don't care about this side. Like, every now and then there'll be like a little side character narrative that I'm all for, but when they're just all in a nice, easy, convenient romance by the end of the series or by the end of the book, I'm just like, oh, that was just a bit too predictable and a bit too easy. But I mean, it's not the end of the world. Like, it doesn't bother me that much, but it's just another thing that I've realised reading this. I'm just a bit like, oh, that just felt a bit unnecessary. Finally finished Apprentice to the Villain. I'm sad to say that my views never really changed throughout the reading experience. This just did not hit the mark in the same way that the first one did, for pretty much all the reasons that I already spoke to you guys about. The romance in this book left me feeling frustrated. The slow burn was fun in the first book because it was the first book and I'm happy to work for it. I love a slow burn romance, but the fact that it was still trying to slow burn in this book, even though all of the cues were there, and it was one of those situations where they would finally almost kiss and something would get in the way, and it's like, how many times can you do that before it is just so redundant and boring and predictable and annoying? So that was a big shame, because the romance was one of the key parts that was enjoyable from the first book that then just missed in this book. As I've also mentioned, the plot was just all over the place. It was so chaotic. You just couldn't land on one thing and settle and understand and read, because the fantasy was definitely lacking a lot more in this book compared to the first book, but I feel like she tried to make it seem like it wasn't. But we weren't explaining it enough. It wasn't given any time of day, and that's why I felt so confused, because the plot is literally shifting from chapter to chapter to chapter, and I'm like, whoa, like what is going on? And then certain elements of magic are being explained, and I'm like, but I don't understand that. Like, how is that? Why is that a thing? How is that a thing? Make me understand. Show me, don't tell me, you know? It was a frustrating read, is probably the best way I can describe it. It just left me feeling very frustrated and unsatisfied, because compared to the first book, this just really did flop for me. I feel like I definitely would still read. I think there's going to be 3 books, so I will read the last one when it comes out. I'm still intrigued to kind of see where the story will go from how it did end. Again, the ending kind of lackluster, but it has set it up for the 3rd and final book. But obviously the way this plot has been changing in this book, I don't know if we're going to get a nice linear flowing plot in the 3rd book, or whether the ending of this will be absolutely futile in the 3rd book and won't even matter and won't even be spoken about. Who knows, because that's just how the course of this has gone. Things just have not made any sense really, and that's Such a shame. I think I'm gonna land on a 2.5 for this. I really didn't enjoy it, to be honest. I was much more forcing myself through this than I was enjoying it, which is such a shame. But, you know, you can't win them all. So what have we learned? What have we learned from this reading vlog? I would say we have learned that reading is subjective. It's so funny, you know, we've read 3 books. They weren't the winners, granted, but they were like the runners up, like the second runners up, with still tens of thousands of votes. And for a start, none of them were a 5-star from me. And we only got 1 book that was a 4-star plus. It just goes to show that books are so subjective to everybody. You can't judge someone for liking a certain book. Ultimately, you also can't enjoy books the same way that others would enjoy them. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, comment and subscribe if you did, and I will catch you next time with a new one. Bye friends.